In this tutorial, I will explain how to add buttons that perform operations to your forms. I will also explain how to add plain HTML code to your forms. Please make sure that you watch the forms tutorial before watching this one. So, there are several ways to add buttons that perform operations such as start a process, run a query, delete an object to your forms. The most common one is to add the so-called panel operations. But you can also add form cells of the button type and embed buttons into HTML. Let's start with panel operations. You define panel operations using the panel operations property of a form. When you add a panel operation, the corresponding button is displayed in a toolbar of the form, usually at the top, but it can also be at the bottom of the form, to the right or left of the form, or inside a toolbox of the form header. You specify where the button will be displayed when you define a panel operation. Let's look at an example. In the CRM sample application, there is the custom object, which has a number of forms defined. One of them is called Editing Narrow, and it has a number of panel operations defined. We can see the generated buttons in the preview of the form here. If we click on the panel operations property, we can see the operations that start different processes, the first 4 of them. We can see that the buttons are located in the top toolbar. Let's add an operation that will delete the current instance of the object that the form shows. So we'll click on the Add button, define the name of the operation, select the type, delete object, and then we'll choose an icon for the operation. This one here, and display it with a red color. When we click OK, we can see the new button at the top of the form. When the user clicks on this button, the object will be deleted. Defining panel operations is pretty straightforward. However, buttons generated for panel operations are always outside the form itself. To generate buttons inside the form, we need to use a different technique. Let's have a look at another form of the custom object called Editing Mobile. Let's assume that we want to add buttons that create a letter and an email to the current customer underneath the address field. To do this, we open the form section for editing, select the address cell, and then insert a new row of the button link type. The rest is similar to panel operations. We define one or more operations to generate the buttons. The difference is that we do not specify the location of the operation. The buttons will be displayed inside the cell. So we add operations that start the process to create a letter, and a new email. As you can see, the resulting buttons are displayed in their own cell. The third way of displaying a button is to embed it inside an HTML cell of the form. We will cover this a little later in this tutorial. I will now show you how to add HTML to your forms. Obviously, you need to be somewhat familiar with the HTML technology to use this feature. Actually, the forms tutorial already explains how to add HTML cells to your forms. Let's quickly recap. We will use another form of the custom object called entry mobile. And we will add some explanation at the top of the form. To do this, I open the form for editing and insert HTML row at the top of the form. Here is the HTML code that I will be adding. When I click OK, I can immediately see the preview of the HTML. Let's move it to the top of the form. So this is quite straightforward. There's a couple of interesting features that you can use in your HTML. First of all, you can refer to the values of the attributes of the object that the form shows inside your HTML. Such values need to be enclosed in double angular brackets. For example, customer last name. In the editing mobile form, there is an example of such an HTML. Let's have a look. Here the form displays the phone number of the customer, and when the user taps on this phone number, a call to this number is made. This is achieved with the following HTML. Another feature that you can use inside HTML cells is that you can display different HTML sections conditionally. Let me show you an example. In the library sample application, we have the member object, which has the outstanding charges attribute. This attribute stores the value of the member's debt. If it is 0, the member doesn't owe anything. Let's display a message in red at the top of the member form showing the debt of the member, but only when this debt is non-zero. Let's open the form for editing. And insert HTML at the top of the form. It will have the following code. The first line defines the condition. If the condition is fulfilled, the HTML defined between the condition and the section end line is shown. The HTML itself refers to the name of the member and the debt that he owes, and it is displayed in red. Let's now move it to the top. Hide label. And merge the cells. Let's see how this works in the browser. So we'll log into the library application and go to the members screen. Let's open the form of the member that has debt. We can see that the message is displayed. However, if we open a member that has no debt, there is no message. Finally, I will show you how to embed buttons in HTML. Let's go back to the editing mobile form of the custom object. Let's insert the following message under the address attribute. Click on this button to create a letter. So we select the address attribute and insert HTML cell. And then we enter the first part of the message. Click on this button, and then we will generate the button itself. I will click on the Add button here. And define the operation that starts a process. This will insert a special element into HTML that represents the button. We do not have to understand what is in this element, as long as it does what we want. Now we will just add the second part of the message. Let's see the result. So click this button to create a letter. We embedded a button inside our HTML code.